Hello, hello, hello. Dan, Alexis, Logan, Daenerys, Sam, Nikki, Liz, Inkpot, Semicio, Murialis, Al, Demler, Purgatory, Fairy Bay, Posh, Roche, Wolfskull, Zeth, Courtney, Quokka, Dan, probably a bunch of other Dans, Cryptic Cows, Sleepy Bunny, Emerald Pigeon, hello, Box, Renshaw, hello everyone. Samurai Pizza Kitten, welcome in. This is in fact the Cow Channel. However, on Wednesday nights at this time, we use the cameras that are usually on our sweet baby cow Winnie and look around the pasture and some of the other enclosures here at Alveus and talk about the insects that we're finding. Maya, who runs the sanctuary, is a big proponent of insect education. My name is Evan. I am an entomologist, and I have been working with the sanctuary for a little bit over a year now. And we do this every week, just seeing what's in the pasture, talking about the insects that we're finding, and also answering any of your generalized bug questions that you may have. So, baby cow feed is going to be offline for the next hour or so. We'll wrap it up about 10 o'clock sanctuary time. But there she is in all her glory. And she left us that wonderful pile of present that we were looking at the beginning of stream. That was teeming with dung beetles. So that's what we've got going on for the next little bit here. But please do stick around. This is a fun segment, and you'll get to see and learn a little bit more about the sanctuary. And also, just watching helps support the baby cow as well. So glad you're here from Reddit and whatever other avenue that went viral on. But this dung beetle right here that we're watching, I hate to say scamper or scurry because those feel like it's both more coordinated and faster. This dung beetle that we see lumbering across the screen here is a result of Winnie. So that pile right behind them is the dung pile that Winnie had left. And this dung beetle is, or was, probably, in her poop pile, for lack of a better term. And Samurai Pizza Kitchen, thank you for the sub, 3 months. Welcome back. So dung beetles will use the dung to actually provision their larvae. There are 3 different kinds of dung beetles in terms of their behavior. And there are some that are called dwellers, which are usually small dung beetles that tend to live directly in the poop. Then you have tunnelers, which is what this guy is. These will take the dung and tunnel straight down underneath, and they will take some of that dung from the pile that they've just dug under and put it down there, make a ball, and that's where they lay their eggs. So they use this dung as a food resource for the larvae, for these dung beetles to be able to reproduce. And then the third type of dung beetle that you're probably the most familiar with are the rollers. That is like the classic dung beetle that everybody thinks about, that will take the ball of poop and roll it away from the rest of the dung pile. It is the same it's the same reasoning why the tunnelers will do it, but rather than having all of the competition just below the dung pile, they take some of that dung and they roll it all away. And then they bury it, and then they lay an egg on it, and then it's food for the larva, and it's the whole system is exactly the same. But a lot of people don't realize that we do have dung beetles here in the US. Whenever anyone thinks about those, and whenever there's the actual dung rolling ones, we do see the dung rolling ones on stream sometimes, which is pretty cool during the day. Everyone's always like, oh, I only thought those were in Africa. And there are dung beetles in Africa. And in fact, one of the Egyptian gods that was in charge of the sunrise each day was called Khepri. And Khepri was the Egyptian god of the rising sun. And the idea was that dung beetles would roll the ball of dung across the desert, just like Khepri would roll the sun across the sky. And so dung beetles in Egypt became that symbol and that really revered animal because they associated it with not only rebirth of taking the dung and then getting new life out of it, but then also as that rebirth of each day of the dung or the sun being rolled across the sky. As you can see, he's not particularly coordinated. He's really struggling. Odd Russian, thanks for the resub. He's really struggling, and I can't really tell you why. In general, they are just sort of uncoordinated on land, because their front arms, you can sort of see him as he's moseying along here. Those front legs are a little bit thickened and a little bit shorter than the other legs, and that's because they're made for digging. They have really thick, really muscly forearms that they're able to dig with in order to help bury that piece of dung that is under the cow patty. But something else that I'm noticing is that at least this right middle leg doesn't seem to be working very well. So it's possible that he's struggling this much because of a slight injury. That left side, it seems to be doing okay, but this right one here in the middle has been kind of straight out and it's been sort of dragging this whole time. So I think some of this uncoordination that we're seeing right now is actually, unfortunately, part of an injury that this beetle sustained in some way. You know, it happens. Digging in dung is a dangerous endeavor. You know, could have been attacked by a bird, could have gotten into a fight with another dung beetle. Not really sure what happened, but he'll be just fine. A little bit uncoordinated, but these ones can actually fly. So he can still probably get around quite fine. If he would decide to fly rather than try to crawl around. Vexbot, this is Digitoonthophagus gazella. This is the gazelle dung beetle, which is actually not native to the U.S. So if there's any solace here of us feeling bad for this guy, just know that he is invasive. So maybe you'll feel a little bit less bad, but doesn't make it easier seeing something struggle like this. So a bit of a shame, but he is in fact invasive. So that's a bit of a bummer. Those microsurgery robots, they did surgery on a grape. Now they're gonna do surgery on a dung beetle. I mean, he should know that he's able to fly. If we go back to the dung pile at any point, we'll probably be able to see other beetles either flying around or flying back in. Because that looked pretty fresh, and I can definitely see that there's other dung beetles actively working on that dung pile. And you'll see that they're definitely, even if they're doing okay, they're not that coordinated. So this one, you're actively seeing dig down under the dung, and all of these little pockets underneath here, this left side that we're seeing, are these dung beetles, these non-native dung beetles here, that they're going to go under here, dig a tunnel straight down, and then take some of the poop with them down there to provision for their larvae. dog who works 2 jobs. So true, Vic. So true. But in this case, obviously that song is a single mom who works 2 jobs, but the ones that typically do the digging and the ones that typically do the rolling are actually going to be the males. So the idea there is that the males are competing with other males for access to resources. And then the females are making their selection based on males that have access to resources. It might not seem like it, but dung is actually a very valuable resource for these beetles in particular, but it's an ephemeral resource, meaning that it's there for a little bit, and when it's there, it's super, super useful. But then when it's gone, these beetles are going to have to fly around and find other access to it. These guys obviously have it made pretty well. Between Winnie and Ace and the donkeys, probably not Stompy that much, but the other large mammals here in the pasture, there's plenty of dung. And even if animal care staff is mucking it and, scooping it all up, the tunnelers are able to, take it and then be done within a night. The dwellers, the ones that actually live in there, will get scooped up and probably develop still wherever staff decides to put the rest of the dung. And then the rollers are able to roll it away and then also still have their access to it. So even though staff goes in every day and does clean up the pasture, there's still a ton of dung beetles on property, that we're seeing during the day, during streams, at night when we're doing bug hunts. But also when I was there in person, we've seen Canthon, Digitoanthophagus, Phanias. We've seen at least 4 or 5 genera of dung beetles. So, the pasturing, the property here at Alveus does seem to be supporting a pretty decent diversity of dung beetles, even with the non-native species probably being the most prominent. Are the roller dung beetles that are here invasive? No, Donkus, they're all native. As far as I know, there aren't any non-native rolling dung beetles in the U.S. There are a couple of tunnelers that are non-native, and then the aphodiines, the little dung beetles, the ones that live in the poop, there are quite a few of those that are non-native that have made it over here to the U.S. But as far as I know, I can't think of any non-native rollers. She remembered Phylophia again. Oh, sick! Was that on the most recent stream with the Phase Boys? I haven't watched that one yet, but I saw that she went bug hunting and that there were spiders. Okay, I'll have to go catch that one. I'll message her. I'm proud of that. Vic asked a really good question. Do they have a favorite poop? Yes. So there are dung beetles that are specialists on certain poops. So in Africa, where there are elephants, there are elephant dung beetles. And these things are like the size of my fist, it's like bigger than a golf ball even. Fetching Chris, we're talking about dung beetles. But yes, so there are elephant dung beetles that specialize only on elephant dung. And there are a couple of small dung beetles in the US that are only on deer poop and things like that. But in general, most of them are pretty generalized. Cattle and other large herbivore is widely available. So typically, a lot of them are found on cattle dung. But if you are a serious dung beetle collector, if you're running a study and trying to see what dung beetles are in an area, you don't just want the widest available poop, you do want the most, generally the most attractive of them. And the consensus is that pig tends to be the most, most bang for your buck in terms of poop that you can use for trapping dung beetles. That's because pigs are omnivores, and so you're starting to get some of the dung beetles that are feeding on herbivore dung, as well as some of the dung beetles that feed on carnivore dung. So you get a nice mix. It's pig that's pretty high up top, and then you've got cow, and then you've got horse. And so the large herbivores are really easy to get a lot of dung, but that's the official published list of like, oh, you're working on dung beetles. How are you going to get bait for your study? Tortilla, you have read my mind. That is, in fact, not the second best. That is, in fact, the first best. So the published list is that, yeah, pig is widely available. You can get a lot of it for your tests and studies and whatnot. But the unwritten part of that paper and of that list of success is that, in fact, people poop is the best dung beetle bait. Because we have a much wider, even, omnivorous diet than you see in pigs. And any real dung beetle person, without being too crass, provides their own bait. When I went to my master's lab, when I went to go visit before I had even, before I had officially signed on or anything, we were at a bar, and we were talking about dung beetle trapping because my master's advisor is a dung beetle person. And we were talking about this very thing. I was like, oh yeah, I picked up pig from the pig unit during my undergrad that I used for my own dung beetle trapping. And my master's advisor was like, yeah, we have pig around here too, but like nothing beats collecting it yourself. And so I was like, yeah, and I've done that before too. It's a bit of a process. Again, we're not going to get too into it. But then the botanist, who again I had just met earlier that afternoon, and he goes, "I need you to tell me right now, is there human shit in your lab freezer?" And my master's advisor looks at him and goes, "Well, yeah." And so that really endeared me to my master's advisor, and that's why I ended up, not why, but one of the many reasons why I decided to go and work with her. But yeah, this does come up if you're doing dung beetle trapping in the tropics, and you're on like a big trip with a lot of entomologists. From what I've heard, there's a bait bucket that people contribute to at will. And yes, I saw someone mention it earlier, Molly did. It does anecdotally turn out that vegan scientist poop is not the best for dung beetle trapping because you miss some of that protein stuff that comes from having some meat in the diet from a omnivorous scientist. So, poop preference is definitely a thing, and if you're gonna do real dung beetle trapping, you gotta do it yourself. Fetching, you might, but not everybody will, and we're trying to keep this segment educational and welcoming, and I don't know if in-depth discussion about collecting that is welcoming to most people. We're gonna pull the bugs. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? Do we have a topic switch lined up anywhere? I know there was a spider right there that we were looking at, but um I get to see a slide of a monarch brain sliver and learn that most of their brain is for vision, fresh out of the chrysalis monarch. That's sick, Sam. Um yeah, it's crazy to think about. I know this is like a very obvious point, and we all recognize this, but insects are animals, right? And they have to do all of the same things that we do in terms of breathing and sensing and reproduction and seeing and all of this stuff. But some of them are like fractions of a millimeter long and are very hard to see without a microscope. And I think that that's like some of the coolest thing that's ever happened in our world is like insects having such a wide range of body plans and doing all of the things that we do just on such small scales. Um, and so the fact that you got to see like part of a monarch brain is so sick. Molly, that was an orb weaver of some sort. The side view is not really the best for identifying them. Usually you need the pattern on the top of the abdomen. But the web that it was sitting in, you could tell it was a type of orb weaver. Spiders, well fed, do they still eat their mate? Sometimes. So spiders and sexual cannibalism is like the term where the female will try to eat the male after they're done mating. This comes up a lot in praying mantises as well, and mantises don't do it as much as the media would like you to think they do. The experiment and the paper that talked about sexual cannibalism in praying mantises was done in a like lab caged environment, and if there's space for the male to escape and leave the female after mating, he typically does. So it's not as common in praying mantises. It doesn't happen all the time like everybody wants you to think it does. But sexual cannibalism has a couple of benefits for the female spider, and like this is why they would do it. Making eggs is expensive, energetically and like resource-wise, very, very, very expensive to produce eggs. And so passing on your genes is like the ultimate goal with evolutionary processes, right? Like that is why males want to mate with females. And in order to give the female the best chance of successfully having eggs with your, you as an individual male, you want to make sure she has the resources available to her to be able to take care of your babies. And so sometimes in the insect world, they bring what are called nuptial gifts, which are usually a food item that is pre-wrapped up to give to the female while you're mating. So one, she's distracted, doesn't try to eat you. And two, you are giving her additional food resources to be able to take care of your babies. However, in some spiders, the females will still try to eat the males. It's, again, not always, but it does happen. But, there are some spiders that will willingly do that. I think it's a genus... I think it's another widow relative, where, the male will be mating with the female, and as they are mating, he will basically somersault and break off his pedipalp so that the embolus, like the thing that's actually transferring the sperm that's up towards the front of the head, he will somersault break that off, and then basically do a front flip onto the female's fangs. So he is intentionally feeding himself to the female. And the reason behind that is, again, if he breaks off his embolus in the female, she's not able to mate again. And then because she's also getting the nourishment from his body, he willingly feeds himself to her in order to make sure that the eggs that are going to be fertilized because they just mated and she can't mate again, basically have the best chance of survival. So there is a genus of spider, I forget what it is, it might even just be like a singular species, that will willingly flip the male, will flip onto the female to feed her after they mate. But in a lot of cases, like with the praying mantis, it's opportunistic. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But those spiders are the only ones that I know of that like willingly are like, okay, my job is done here. I'm going to be food now. If the male mantises can get away, they typically do. But that myth is probably never going away because everyone just always thinks about praying mantises eating their mates, which is fine because it does happen in them too. But it's the same reason, right? She doesn't eat the male out of spite or anything like that. She is looking for a food resource to be able to make sure that she has enough energy and enough resources to be able to properly lay the ootheca, or the egg case that mantises do. Eating bait is fine. None of this is human relationship advice, but you know, do what you do. They have 5 vision cones versus our 3. That's very cool, Sam. When I'm scrolling back up to see what people were saying. In Alaska, I saw how different native bees are from in Texas, and that was cool to see. Yeah, that is really neat. The southwestern United States is like the bee diversity hotspot of the world. There are tons and tons and tons of species. There are like 1,500 species of bee in Arizona alone. And part of that comes from being specialized on certain plants. And when you're in an area that has a lot of very specific plants that have very specific requirements, you get this coevolution of bees that are only on, like, squash, or bees that are only on sunflowers, or at least majority of the time on sunflower or squash. But up in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, like Alaska and Canada and all that, there's still a ton of different native bees. But the plant communities up there are often a little bit more homogeneous, meaning that there's a lot of plants, but a lot of it's ferns, and ferns don't get pollinated by bees. And so you do get way different stuff up there, and they do look different. It's very cool. But you don't quite get the same amount of diversity that you get in warmer climates. I saw a grasshopper and said orthopter out loud. Heck yeah, Courtney. How did you said you had bug exam, right? How was that? Hope you did well. Able to bust out chat's facts. Next time you go see your bug professor, you can tell him all about poop ranking. Collection of bee pictures on your wall. Yeah, that's sick, Andromeda. Native bees are really neat, and I think some of what I do on my streams, and I think a big way that people do end up appreciating bugs a little bit more, is seeing them up close. I I know my like aha moment of like, oh, I'm going to devote my life and do entomology as a job came from looking in a microscope and being able to see a lot of these details up super close. And so having macro photography shots and like very pretty pictures of bugs helps a lot of people start to appreciate them in a way that they wouldn't otherwise see them. And like I said on my streams, I do chats. So I stream over on my channel and we raid into here. But I have a microscope attached to the Twitch stream, so you're able to actually see and zoom in on some of these like really tiny structures and things like that. And I think that really does help people appreciate bugs a lot more, is seeing them up close and seeing them, seeing some of the really neat structures that they have on them. This is a tree cricket. So we've talked about these before. These are the ones that you can actually use their call to do the temperature calculation. And the reason that I know that, I thought we had one of these the other week, and it ended up being that scaly cricket. Scaly crickets are wingless. So this one has wings, so I know it's not a scaly cricket again. These wings are relatively rounded at the back and lay very flat over the back of the body. So we were able to see that when it was on this side of the stick. And maybe it'll pop out here again in a second, but it has the very, very long antennae, which could make you think that it was a katydid. But the back leg structure and the structure of the wings tells me that this would be a tree cricket. And this is one of those things that's taxonomically ambiguous, meaning that we're not really sure where it gets placed, and sometimes people put it in one area and sometimes people put it in another. Some people will keep tree crickets as a subfamily of like regular crickets, and other times people will classify them as their own thing. I haven't looked into it enough to actually have like a very well-informed opinion about this, but yeah, that's the scoop on tree crickets. Past probably. That's a W in my book. That's fine. Could they eat beef liver? I don't know about that. I probably wouldn't, because I think it would get gross in their enclosure before they would finish it all, and that would just be in general kind of bad. Find them gross but love them anyway. Hey, Andromeda, stick around here for a little bit. We work on that a little bit here. And I'm not saying it's going to work, and I'm not saying you like have to switch your worldview, but in my experience of, you know, working in the insect field for like 10 years now, people feel a lot less squeamish about them, and they find them a lot less gross the more you learn about them. And so it's great that you're here, and I'm not trying to like super preach and change your mind or anything like that, but I think if you stick around here long enough, we'll work on that and they won't be quite as gross. You can see here, this is a really nice view of the underside, and you can see how those wings are very round and very flat at the back. And there are those two cerci, or those two little feelers on the end of the abdomen that, again, tell me that that's a tree cricket rather than just a normal cricket. And I'll post links about tree crickets. Tree cricket, poop, ranking. I'm taking my notes for the Chat's library, so in the Discord, !bug cord, we have an Alveus Bug Enjoyer Discord, and I post recaps of some of the stuff that we talk about here. If there is an article that I mention, or a cool bug that we're talking about, or something that we need to have a better view of it, like this tree cricket here, I'll send links in there and people can go back and see what we've talked about in chats past. Oh, Dantalium. Yeah, sorry. I'm catching up here, and Tortilla's always coming in clutch with these bug guide links for me while we're here. But yeah, Dantalium. I don't know if you've ever heard, but people will sometimes say that you can tell the temperature outside by seeing how fast the crickets are chirping, and then like I forget what the formula is, right? But it's sort of like an old wives' tale that you can do that. It's not completely an old wives' tale though, because it does work with one species of tree cricket. So it won't work with just any cricket, and a lot of times people are like, "Oh, that's like a myth. You can't do that," because they've tried it with the wrong type of cricket calling. And crickets, like birds, use their songs to attract mates. And so people, I can't, but people can recognize different cricket calls and tell them apart just by sound. I'm not there yet. I don't really work on crickets, and that's not really something that I focus a lot on. But if you do know the specific song, I think it's the snowy tree cricket specifically, you can roughly calculate the temperature based on how fast the cricket is chirping. Odd Russian. When I was a kid, I was told that cicadas only come out every 7 years. Is there any truth to that? Yes, but also no. So there are cicadas that come out every year. They're called annual cicadas, and so they have a really short, relatively short, immature life stage, underground, feeding on tree roots, and then they will crawl up and emerge, shed their skin, and then fly around. But there are some that have much longer life cycles. There are 3-year, there are 7-year, there are 13-year, and there are also 17-year cicadas. And the 17-year cicadas are the ones that get all of the big press. Like a couple of years ago, there was like the Brood X thing up in the Northeast, and then the dual brood convergence last year that was out in like Indiana. Those are specific species of cicadas that come out every 17 years. And those species will always come out every 17 years, but there are cicadas around most years in your area because of these annual ones. And like in the Southwest, I just moved from Arizona recently. We had something like 35 species of cicada in Arizona, but we didn't have the 17-year ones, which are called the periodical cicadas. So it is true that there are some that only come out every 7 years, but it's not all cicadas, because cicadas refers to a whole family of insect that has about 3,500 species worldwide, I think. So not all of those 3,500 come out every 7 years, but some of them do. Fear bugs, working as over. Vorozen, thanks for that. We always enjoy hearing that, and that's better than most people, you know? Not everybody has to love bugs and like be super into them and study them all the time and like think they're super cute. But respect is what we are kind of working towards, rather than being like, oh, this is gross, I'm going to squish this even though it's outside and minding its own business. Healthy respect, maybe a little bit of fear that keeps you away from it is fine, and kind of where we would like to go. So positive bug vibes. It doesn't have to be totally infatuated with and in love, but like understanding and respecting them for what they do in the environment is kind of where we are going with that. So we appreciate you being here, and for saying that. Went to an insectarium, a very cool sleepy bunny. Courtney, love that, love that. Oh, Molly, thanks for the calculator. Catching up here. Spider, 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 spider. Yeah. So I think those were very unrelated spiders that just happened to be near each other on the ground there. In most spiders, at least in most ground-dwelling spiders, so like these wolf spiders, like we're looking at now, they're not that sexually dimorphic in size. So the males aren't going to be that much smaller than the females, like that one was. So, like I said, I think those were just two unrelated spiders that happened to be kind of vibing next to each other. But you do see really dramatic size differences like that in orb weaving spiders. So in the southeast, there are these spiders that are called Trichonephila clavata, which are the... No, that's not correct. Trichonephila clavipes are the native ones. They're the golden silk orb weavers. And the female spiders of that group can be several inches long, like leg span of like 3 or 4 inches, which is pretty big. But then seeing a male next to her, the male is like a spot on the web. Spiders. Ooh, y'all are quick with the bug guides. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, so you can go on here and I'll see if there's a... I'm going to keep talking about these, but I'm going to see if there's a good picture where there's a male and a female next to each other. Yeah, okay, perfect, I found one. So, here you go. So if you click this one that I just sent, you can see how much smaller the male is than the female. And these are the same species. So these are trying to go mate right now. You can even see if you look under his mouth, he'll have those two boxing glove structures, which are the emboli, or the pedipalps. And on the one that's closest, or on the left-hand side of this photo, you can actually see the embolus, the needle-like structure that they actually deliver the sperm with. So spiders do what is called indirect sperm transfer. So it's not like mammals where where the penis is directly going into the female. Spiders will lay down what is called a sperm web. They will deposit sperm on the sperm web, and then they have these little structures on their pedipalps that has a hypodermic needle structure, or sort of like a turkey baster on them. And it then picks up the sperm into those structures that are on the front of the body. And then it has to get that front part of the body under the female in order to mate. So that structure that's in that picture, that little straight piece that's going back underneath the male's body, that's the embolus, and that's the thing that will actually transfer the sperm to the female when they're mating. Which is pretty cool that it was able to... pretty cool that they were able to get those... that picture there. N.A. Marie, yes, that's called the tapetum lucidum. Molly, again, thank you. It's a membrane in the back of the eye that helps with vision at night and like reflecting and collecting light at night. It's the same structure that makes cat eyes glow at night. And that's a pretty characteristic thing of wolf spiders. Wolf spiders have very, very large eyes that are super visible at night. Did anybody go spider sniffing? I know I sort of assigned that as homework last week, but did anybody actually go do it? For those of you that might not have been here or don't remember what I'm talking about, if you take a headlamp or a flashlight or something like that, and you put it up right at your nose, that angle of the light you can find wolf spiders pretty easily. So if you go out to a grassy area and you put the flashlight like right on your nose and look around, you see eye shine on the ground, you can walk over and then you'll actually like find the spider. I call it spider sniffing. It's an activity that I used to do when I used to run nocturnal like field trips for a nature center that I used to volunteer with. Um, if you like spiders, it's going to be really cool. If you don't like spiders, maybe don't do it because I think it's going to ruin your illusion of being outside. There are way more spiders out there at any given time than you think there are. And if you spider sniff them and you are afraid of what you might see, maybe skip this activity. But I think it's pretty neat that you're able to go and track them down with that. And it's not just wolf spiders that have that, but wolf spiders are just the most common of the spiders. Uh, there are several hundred species of wolf spider in the US and several thousand worldwide, so it's a very commonly distributed family that you can find almost anywhere. And it's neat to be able to track them down like that with the eye shine. But again, if you're squeamish of spiders and maybe don't want to be fully aware of how many are around you at any given time, maybe skip the spider sniffing. But if you do it, and you are able to track down a spider, I would love to see your pictures in the Discord. We have the bug cord, exclamation point bug cord if you're not in there yet. This is an Alveus server, or at least Alveus adjacent server of all of the Alveus bug nerds that hang out in there. So lots of very talented photographers and identifiers. So we hang out there during the week. If you have a bug question that absolutely cannot wait until the following week's chats, I'm more than happy to answer it in there. But a lot of people do just post cool stuff that they find throughout the week. So if you go out and sniff spiders, I would love to see what you found in there. Pengo, yeah, a lot of spiders don't have eye shine. Ones that are typically day active or ones that don't actively hunt as much, they don't need that extra layer to help them see better. So, like orb weavers, which we have seen a lot of on cams, there's a cool katydid in the top right. Yeah, look at that. Um, the orb weavers are out at night, but because they don't actually need to see to catch their prey, they're just letting stuff fly into the webs. They don't have the eye reflection. And daytime active spiders, like jumping spiders, they have really big eyes, but they don't need the extra membrane because they're not trying to get all of this light in here at night. Katie did what? Yeah, so this is a pterygoneid, also sometimes called a long-horned grasshopper. They're not really horns, of course, but those are the antennae. And you can see, at least compared to that tree cricket, these hind legs go a lot more straight up. Crickets are kind of more off to the side, but katydids tend to have more very straight up and down hind legs like that. And I can't tell. I don't know if the chicken cam has a microphone on because I have mine muted for the stream being at the time, or for the time being right now. But we can see stridulation happening again. We've seen this before with cricket on one of the cameras, where they take their hind wings and they have a file on one side and a scraper on the other. So it's like if you've ever taken your finger and Hello? We're back. We can hear you. Can hear me. Great. Great. We're back. Thanks, Space. Thank you as always. You're a lifesaver. Where were we? Stridulation. That's right. So I saw somebody posted in there, but that's what it's called when insects are making noise by rubbing two structures together. And insects across different groups will still use stridulation, but they will have different parts of their body that actually make the noise. So katydids and crickets will do it with the bases of their wings, like like we're seeing here, and you guys are hearing. I'm not hearing, but that's what it's doing right now. There are some beetle larvae, like some scarabs, that will have a file and scraper on their mandibles, so they actually just kind of like gnash their teeth to make the squeaking noise. Longhorn beetles will typically have one at the base of the head, and it rubs the little scraper on the neck. So if you ever have a really pissed off longhorn beetle, they're going to be like bobbing their heads at you. There are other beetles that have a file and scraper underneath the elytra, so they're going to be like pumping their abdomens up. Sort of like they're going and like breathing in really fast, but they're actually just flexing their abdomen there to be able to stridulate their abdomen against their underside of the wing covers. But then, everybody's favorite type of stridulation is, of course, the water boatman. This is a world's wildest podcast classic. But water boatmen are these very tiny insects. They can be like 5-6 millimeters long. So pretty small in general. But they make one of the loudest sounds in the animal kingdom by stridulating. However, they're not using their heads, they're not using their wings, they're not using their legs, they're using their penis. And so this very, very tiny insect has the scraper, I guess, would be the genitalia, and I think the file is on the outside of the body. And these things are so loud that as a human, which we notoriously do not have good hearing for an animal, you can hear them underwater while you are above water. So if you're sitting on the edge of a creek or a pond or whatever, you can, if you're listening very closely, you can hear the water boatmen under the water stridulating with their genitalia. So it is very, very loud, and that again is a world's wildest podcast classic. I shall try and track down the episode there, and link it. Water boatman stridulation. Yeah. So we'll put that there. But yeah, so that's one of many ways that insects can make noise. They can do it with their penis, or they can do it with their wings, like this guy is here, or their mandibles, or their neck, or many other ways. But they use them for different forms of communication. With the water boatman and with the katydid and everything like that, they're using it as a sexual attractant call to communicate with other members of the same species, being like, "Hey, anybody want to breed over here?" But then, best beetles, which are a scarab relative, they live subsocially, so it is a pretty big beetle that lives in logs, and they live with their family. inside that log, meaning that there are adults and larvae coexisting. And unlike most things where they just drop the larvae, these ones will actually help and take care of and sort of live together with their offspring. But you're inside of a log, right? You're not really able to see that well. And so in order to be able to communicate while in the log, they actually have a repertoire of like, it's something like 22 different squeaks and calls that they can make to communicate with each other inside of the log. And that's another group that the mandibles, so the larvae, because they're a grub, right? They don't have many other strong surfaces to be able to scrape and file together. So they will, the larvae will use their mandibles to be able to squeak and communicate with the adults. And then the adults can use their mandibles, but they can also use, I think it's also their abdomen that they're able to squeak and make the noises with to communicate with the offspring. So those are always pretty cool. Best beetles, we didn't have them out in Arizona. It's just too dry. There's not as much dead wood there as there is in Florida. But I've definitely missed seeing them. They're not very diverse here in the US. There are only 2 species. But they're very, very cool and a great beginner beetle because they're cute, they're pretty big, and everyone likes the fact that they talk to their babies and to their family. So it's a good starter bug. I'll post some pictures and probably some links to the science there behind what they're doing. It is about that time, chat. So I'm going to answer Roach BF's last question here, and then we are going to call it here for the night. Bugs can smell, but it's not the same way that we smell. Bugs don't have noses, so they're not taking in anything that way. But what insects do have that we do not are antennae. And so antennae are general chemoreceptors for them, which means basically that it is a chemical input device. So they're able to use that to find, like the dung beetles, they're able to find the poop. So they do smell it. They pick up the chemicals that the poop is putting off to be able to locate those. But they will also be able to use it to smell other things. Male insects will oftentimes have much larger, fluffier antennae than the females will. And that's because the females will put off pheromones, or a chemical that basically attracts the males to them. So they are able to pick up and find females that way. So the males will have much more room on the antenna because they need that higher surface area to be able to smell with. So in general, yes, they can smell, but it is a different it's a different system than what we have. But they do take in chemicals and use that to find food, find mates, and help them sense the world around them. All right, y'all. That is going to do it for me this evening, and thank you again for another fantastic week of Alveus Chat Chats. Thank you all for being here, as always. I would also like to thank Logan, our wonderful cam operator, as always. Shout out Space if you're still here for saving the stream in the middle like you did, but shout out Space in general. If you're not in the Alveus Insect Enjoyers Discord, that's !bugcord right now. We hang out in there throughout the week, so if you have a question, you're more than welcome to answer it or ask it in there, and post pictures of your spider sniffing finds. There's also the Alveus Clips channel, which has fantastic content. If you can't watch the live cams all day, you get the best highlights there on the Clips channel. Found that link there in the chat. And then also, I do streaming as well. I've started just a few weeks ago, and this community has been incredibly supportive of that journey for me. So I typically stream on Mondays, but I also definitely do pre-chat chats. So on my stream for about 2 hours before we do this programming, I have a microscope and we look at some cool stuff under that. So if you feel free to join me over there to get more bug content, if you so choose. Thank you all again. I hope you have a great night, and I shall see you next week. Bye, everyone. Oh, wait, one more before I leave. I forgot about rounds. Everybody stick around for rounds. We look at and check the ambassadors one more time before we go to bed. And that starts right after we're done here. Stick around. Okay, now goodbye.